Hello everyone, Miss Carrie here from Miss Carrie's Creations. I've joined the creative design team for the September collab. This week we have some great projects that you can make with a shaker theme, and I have a few surprises for you along the way. Many of the design team members have already shared their projects with you. If you've missed any of the previous projects, I have a playlist linked on the screen at the end of my video and in the description below. Today I'm going to show you 3 fall card front panels that I will be creating with my Cricut Joy. I'm also going to be showing you some stenciling techniques and how to make a flatter shaker card that's easier to mail. Before I get started with my project, I want to let you know that our team has just opened the doors to our 31 Days of Christmas Cards classes. Throughout the month of October, you get to enjoy 31 card making tutorials with over 60 card making ideas. In the description below, I have added a link that you can use to register. Let's head into Cricut Design Space and start making these 3 cards. For those of you who do not have a Cricut machine, there are tons of ideas in this video for you, and most of these cards can be replicated using your dies. I will be creating 3 card panels today, an A2 size, a mini slimline, and a standard slimline. The first card base is going to be the A2 size card, which requires a 4.25 by 5.5 inch rectangle. I'm going to add that shape to my canvas and size it to the card base size. This one is going to be a window card with leaf images. I have added an image from my image library to the canvas, and I'm going to delete the portions of the image I don't want to use from the design. I'm going to place the leaf layer over the card base and size it to fit, and then I'm going to attach these 2 together. People often ask me why I choose to attach over slice for projects like this. I'm not going to fully explain this today, but I do have a video here on my channel that explains the difference between slice and attach. I'm going to add a link in the upper right corner for you to watch later. Now, the first leaf layer is complete, so I'm going to create the standard slimline. Again, I have added a square shape to my canvas and sized it to the slimline card base size, which is 3.5 inches wide by 8 inches high. I'm going to bring in another leaf design from my image library and duplicate it 2 times so that I have 3 leaf images. Then I'm going to manipulate them to fit the card front. When you are choosing images for these window cards, you don't want an image that has lots of cuts on the inner portion of the leaves, and you also want to avoid any open cuts on the end of the leaves. These are going to be designed as windows in the card, so you need something that is more solid for these types of designs. I want these 3 images to be lined up and spaced evenly on my card base. I'm going to place the top leaf where I want it to go on the card. Then I'm going to place the bottom leaf in its location. Now I'm going to select all 3 leaves by holding down my Shift key in the keyboard and selecting the images. Then I will choose Align, Distribute Vertically. Now I want to make sure that these are centered on my card base. Again, I'm going to select all 3 leaf images, then group them together. I'm going to select the group of leaves and the card base. Then I'm going to choose Align Center. Some of you might need to pause at this point and go back and rewatch that. I often speed up my YouTube tutorials because my viewers do not like long videos. The Cricut tutorials that I create for the CDT classes are so much slower. In last year's 31 Days of Christmas classes, I shared some shaped cards created on the Cricut machine, and I walked everyone through the process of how to design the cards in a much slower tutorial. This year I have another Cricut class planned for our 31 Days of Christmas event, and I can't wait to share that with you. All right, let's get back to the project. Now that the leaves are aligned, I can attach these to the card base and move on to the third card. This final card base is a mini slimline sized at 3.25 inches by 6.25 inches. On this card, I'm creating a frame, and I'm going to add a circle image for the sentiment. I'm going to duplicate the rectangle 2 times, and I'm going to hide the other 2 card bases so that I can show you how to make this frame. The first rectangle is the same size as the card base. This is going to be the larger part of the frame. I'm going to select the second rectangle and change the size to 1/2 inch smaller. This will create a 1/4 inch frame around all 4 sides. When you are sizing images, you may need to click the unlock icon at the top and type in the exact size you need. Make sure that you hit the enter key after you change the measurement so that it changes the size of the shape. Now I want to align these 2 images. I'm going to select both of the rectangles and align center. I have changed the colors here so that you can see that this has centered the smaller rectangle over the larger one. Now I'm going to attach the 2 together so that the smaller rectangle stays in place when I cut these out. I'm also going to add a circle shape to this design for my sentiment, and then I'll unhide the other 2 card bases and save this design. When I click Make It, I will be selecting On Mat for my cutting options. You can see here that each of these card bases have the images attached in place where I laid them on the canvas. The Attach tool keeps them in the location I selected, and it's going to cut those leaves from each of the card bases. Here you can see that I have my Joy ready to go. I have placed the cardstock onto the mat, and I'm going to select cardstock in the material settings in Design Space. The Joy does not have a load unload button or a go button. All of that is on the screen of my computer. This is a little bit different than those larger machines. Like I said earlier, these card bases can also be cut on your larger Cricut machines. If you're not a Cricut machine owner, you could also use some of your favorite dies to create these window designs. I kept it really simple today because I wanted this project to be something that most of you could replicate. All right, now that I have all 3 card bases cut, let's take a look at the supplies I'm going to be using for the cards. Today I'm going to create a flatter shaker card with these shaker windows. These are so much easier to mail and they're simple to use. There's no foam tape needed for this style of card because the adhesive is built right into the design. I also have some fun fall shaker pieces from This Calls for Confetti. On my blog post today, I'm hosting a giveaway for a gift certificate to This Calls for Confetti. I will put a link to my blog post in the description below so that you can check out that giveaway. On these cards, I'm going to be creating some plaid backgrounds. So I've grabbed a plaid stencil set and a few images and dies for my fall icons and sentiments. Let's start with the plaid backgrounds for each of the cards. I've placed all the elements from my A2 card onto an adhesive mat. This is going to help hold the stencils and die cuts in place. I'm going to stencil over the leaf cutouts also so that I can use them for another project. I'm using antique linen, scattered straw, and ground espresso for this card. And I've started with the lightest, which is antique linen. It works best to go in the direction of the stencil and use a light touch, especially when you have these thinner lines on the stencil design. After adding that first stenciled image, I'm going to bring in some scattered straw and create a pattern going in the opposite direction. These stencils are great to have for both fall and Christmas, but I did go to the website and notice that they're retiring and they're on clearance. So if you want to grab some of these for yourself, you might want to do so sooner than later. I have moved on to ground espresso and I'm adding another design going across the card. These small lines are going to fill in the white space between the other stenciled images. I'm going to have to move this stencil a few times because I only want the lines in the white spaces. Plaid stencils like this are easy to alter. If you struggle not knowing how to create a plaid design or what colors to use, you can go online and search for tartan designs or plaid fabric to get some inspiration. On those vertical lines, I didn't use much of the espresso ink because I wanted to give it a softer look. Now that the first card is finished, I'm going to move on to the second design. The mini slimline is going to have a pink and blue combo, which seems to be popular this fall. These stencils are 6 inches tall and the background is 6¼ inches. So I am going to tape the ends in place so that the stencil doesn't shift. This design is going to be one that does show inside of that frame. So I'm using a lighter touch with the colors to give them a more distressed look. I'm going to be using a larger line both vertically and horizontally on this card using spun sugar. And then I will add some smaller lines with Uncharted Mariner. Now that we have the second background complete, we're going to move on to the third design. This third card is a slim line with a leaf window background. The plaid is going to be added to the leaf images in the windows. I'm going to place that card panel over my background, and then I'm going to use a pencil to mark the area where the leaves are going to be. I had to do this because those stencils are not long enough to cover the entire background, but I don't really need to cover the entire background here, just the area where the leaves are. I'm going to use some orange hues for this one, and I'm rotating the stencil so that the pattern goes diagonally. The stencils are wide enough to cover 2 of the leaves. So when I move it to the third leaf, I am lining up the stencil so that the pattern continues onto the next design. Again, I'm using a light touch with very little color because I want this to have a distressed look. Alright, now that we have all 3 backgrounds complete, let's assemble some shaker cards. The first card is an A2 size card that has a leaf window. I've stamped a pumpkin image with some leaves and vines using this layered stamp set and dies. And I've created a background to go behind my card in a sage color with some texture I created using a cover plate die. I'm going to assemble the shaker portion first. These pockets have a protective film over the front that can be removed easily with an eraser. Before I attach this, I am going to bend those side strips towards the back. The adhesive is going to go to the back side of this background, so you're going to want to bend towards the adhesive. Now I want to remove 3 of the adhesive strips and attach them in place. I'm going to leave the one at the top open so that I can pour in my confetti. This is a lovely leaf confetti in orange, gold, and blue. I'm going to pour this in and then I'll secure this pocket at the top. I'm using double-sided tape to adhere the card panel to the acetate. I've discovered that this works a little bit better than glue and I don't have to wait for it to dry. Now I can add my pumpkin decorations and this little sentiment. Using that pocket gives me a much flatter card, but I will be adding foam tape to the images. If you want to keep this card nice and flat for mailing, you do not need to use the foam tape. Alright, now that we have this first card complete, I'm going to work on the second card. This is a slimline with 3 leaf windows. I have heat embossed a sentiment for this using a phrase from that pumpkin stamp set, and I've cut a few bitty leaves from cardstock. I have used the cover plate to create some texture on the front panel, and I love the way this looks. Before I attach my acetate to the plaid background, I want to create some little dams with tape. With a card like this, I don't want all of the confetti sitting at the very bottom of the card. So I'm going to be placing some double-sided tape around the areas where the leaf windows are going to be, and this is going to keep the confetti in each of those spaces. I have placed the acetate pocket on top of the front panel so that I know where to place the tape. Make sure that the front panel is facing downward and your acetate pocket has the adhesive side up. This will ensure that you have your tape lined up correctly. I'm just adding a few of the strips of tape horizontally between each of the leaves, and then I'm going to add a little bit at the top and at the bottom. Now I can add that acetate pocket. Again, I'm going to use the eraser to remove the protective film, and then I'll fold the side panels towards the adhesive strips. To fill this pocket, I'm going to be adding the confetti from the side. I have adhered the top, the bottom, and one of the sides in place, and then I'm going to pop open the little spaces where the leaves are and use a gem tray to help me get the confetti in the space. Once I have confetti in all 3 leaf areas, I can seal up this side panel. The front panel is going to be adhered to the acetate with double-sided tape, and then I'm going to add the sentiment and tuck a few of these little leaves in place. Now you could change out the color of this front panel for a more muted pattern, some craft cardstock, or you could use an embossing powder to create some texture. I think it would be great to try some watercolors or sprays on this front panel too. All right, let's go ahead and work on the third and final card. This one is the mini slimline in pink and blue plaid. Those colors are not your typical fall hues, but I always seem to see pink and blue in the fall. In fact, I might even have a plaid flannel shirt that looks just like this. The acetate window is going to be adhered to the plaid panel just like we did before, and now I have to decide on which confetti to use. I have 3 different ones here from This Calls for Confetti. I have an orange leaf, a yellow leaf, and this fun pink ghosty confetti. Now, as cute as this pink ghost one would look in this card, I think I'm going to save it for another project and use the blue and yellow one instead. For the decorations, I cut out some circles with my Cricut. On the white circle, I heat embossed the sentiment in blue and added a little bit of ink around the edges. Behind the 2 circles, I'm going to tuck some vellum leaves and little yellow sprigs that I cut with a die. The smile phrase was also cut with a die, and it's going to be placed in the center of the circle on top of some stitching I added. All right, I'm going to adhere all of these to some card bases, and then I'm going to show you the finished cards. Here are the 3 shaker cards we created today using the Cricut, some acetate pockets, and fall accents. The first card is a standard A2 size card. I created the large leaf window with a stamped pumpkin at the base. Across the top, I did add a little bit of twine and a bow. The second card is a slimline card with 3 leaf windows. The plaid in the background was created with the stencil, giving this card a charming mix of orange and blue. I added some texture to the front panel and kept the sentiment simple with some bitty leaves tucked around it and a few acrylic dots. The mini slimline is a unique mix of color with pink, blue, and yellow. On the leaves, I added some snowflake pops of color to bring a little glitter to the card, and I added a little twine bow. Before I share some close-ups, I do want to remind you once again that our 31 Days of Christmas card event is starting soon, so make sure you register using the link below. These 3 designs are simple to recreate using images you own in Cricut Design Space or with dies you have in your collection. If you are one who enjoys pinning projects to inspiration boards, I will have these photos on my website today. While you are there, don't forget to register for that This Calls for Confetti gift certificate giveaway. Today, Julie also has a project for you, so make sure you stop by her channel and see what she has made. If you have any questions about this project or the supplies I used, feel free to comment below. I hope that you have a wonderful week, and I can't wait to see what you create.